Here we go. I think we're good. Hi, everyone. This is Allison with the Gallatin County Democrats. I'm really excited to once again have Representative Alice Buckley join us this evening. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
It is good to be here. As I just was telling you before we went live, I did my best to get home and out of the Capitol, and I didn't succeed in that. So I'm here in the bullpen, in the basement of the Capitol, and it's just good to be here.
Awesome. Well, I know that you are super busy, so I know that everyone appreciates your time. So I think the big thing that we all, at least I certainly want to just say off the bat is congratulations on getting your first bill through the House, House Bill 221, which is a bill that allows candidates to use campaign donations for their childcare expenses. And I just have to say thank you. Thank you for working so hard to get that through the House. I would love to know what that experience was like.
Yeah, should we start there?
Yes, let's start there.
So I think, a couple of things to think about. First is the legislative process is designed to not let bills be signed into law. And I think that's just an important place to start. There are a lot of steps. A bill's first goes through committee. It has to be heard in committee and voted out of committee. If it's voted out of committee, it makes it onto the House floor. We call that committee vote the first reading of the bill. We call the second reading of the bill the vote we take on the House floor. The third reading of the bill is the second vote we take on the House floor. It takes place usually a day later, and then it goes over the Senate. The process starts over. It goes to the Senate committee. It goes on to the Senate floor. It then is passed on to the governor's desk to be signed. So it is a long road for a bill, and it's been a really humbling and interesting experience to think about what that looks like, especially in the context of being a Democrat in the minority, in the super minority here. So this bill, as Allison said, it allows candidates to use campaign funds to cover childcare expenses explicitly when the candidate is campaigning, so knocking doors, attending a town hall, and made it out of state administration. That was the committee it was in. It made it out on a pretty slim margin. It was 11-8. So I had a couple of Republicans who I had explicit conversations with. There was a number of others who specifically who voted against it. And then if we're thinking about what it looks like to pass a bill on the House floor, there are 100 members of the House of Representatives. There are 33 Democrats. So to get to 51, and a 50-50 vote kills a bill. To get to 51, we need 18 Republican votes. And I would say we're seeing an interesting thing happen this session where there are a variety of bills we're passing called cleanup bills, or bills that are requested by a committee. And those are really simple changes in code. They're done because we move quickly as a legislature. We are getting everything done in 90 days. So they're bills that are coming through basically to say, hey, we forgot something in the code, or there's something we have to clean up. And those are moving through fine. I think as a legislature, we're saying we're gonna move those through. But then most other Democratic pieces of legislation are not making it through the process. And the reason is that it's really hard to count to 18. It's really hard to get 18 Republicans to say, yeah, I'm gonna potentially vote against my party and give you a yes vote, when there's not a lot of leverage, there's not a lot of reciprocity that we can promise in the super minority. And so this looked like one-on-one conversations with almost every Republican, so 67 of them, to say, hey, here's my bill. What do you think of it? And most of those people said, here are the problems I have with it. Here's the suspicion I have with it. And then started counting to 18 and got enough of those people to say, this seems interesting. A big help with that was the fact that I got co-sponsors early on who were Republicans, so I had some credibility there. I also have been showing up in the building, and so I've had the opportunity to build relationships. I think that work and those hard conversations have to happen on a foundation of trust and respect. And I've from the beginning have been trying to show up like that. But it was hard, and then got through on second reading, and there was a lot of animosity and suspicion around it over the weekend, and so then spent a lot of time thinking about what it looked like to kind of shore up those votes. So it was just a really interesting experience.
That's amazing. That's a lot of work. You actually got more than 18 in the
Yep.
end, didn't you? Yeah.
Yep.
Which is just fantastic. And thank you for putting in that work and building that trust. I think that, right now we maybe don't see that as much, and so I am grateful that you are doing that, and it's having some results for this bill. So for anyone watching right now, feel free to post a question in the comments. I will read them and we'll try and get to them. But in the meantime, what are some other bills that you're looking at or excited about or working on in addition to 221?
Yeah. So I am working on one in close conjunction with the city of Bozeman to make a small change in election law to allow the city to streamline what's called a special purpose district, or for us in Bozeman, it's our Parks and Trails district, to basically just be able to put that on the regular ballot in November. That just passed out of committee today. I presented it earlier this week. I feel really proud and excited of that. It passed out 19-0, which is a little bit better than my initial vote. And I had a hearing on a bill to support victims and survivors of sexual assault earlier this week in judiciary. That went really well as well. That'll be voted on tomorrow. And so if those are voted on out of committee, those will go to the House floor sometime next week. And then I'm working on a bill I feel really excited about with a Republican senator from Gallatin County, Senator Walt Sales. We're working on a child care task force bill that feels important and exciting to both of us, and it's just been such a cool opportunity to work closely together. And I will, and then a couple other ones in the pipeline. Awesome. As well. So certainly working on some legislation, and then just also trying to show up here as a thoughtful human.
Yeah, that's amazing, Alice. Thank you. So Cheryl asked a good question. She missed the first part of this. Yes, House Bill 221, the child care bill, the first one that Representative Buckley has done, it has passed out of the House, so it's now going to go to the Senate, and it'll be heard in the Senate State Administration. Is that the committee that'll go?
Yeah, yep. So it'll be in State Administration, and so I'm working on getting it through that committee, and then it'll go on to the Senate.
Okay.
Floor.
And will the most of the bills that we've been following have started in the House, and but not. There have been some that have started in the Senate. But now that your bill has moved to the Senate, will you do another committee hearing, like presenting it to the State Administration Committee in the Senate?
Yeah, exactly. It starts all over. I mean, it's really interesting. So it'll start all over. I'll have the same. I will work on getting the same proponents there who were there before. It's an opportunity to learn some lessons too. In this case, I thought the hearing actually went really well, so I won't change much about it. But we'll have a hearing and then I've started having, I mean, in preparation for this, like I did before, I think a lot of the groundwork happens before the hearings. So I've been trying to have one-on-one conversations and say, hey, this is what it's doing.
Mhm.
It's not, it's not scary. It's a pretty simple bill. I'm doing my best to kind of lay the groundwork for that. And
Mhm.
that'll happen, that'll be through Senate State Administration sometime this coming week, I would imagine.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll share an update on that when we know when the committee hearing is scheduled for. So I think another question that has been kind of bubbling up with some of our community members who are really into the session right now. I mean, it's kind of amazing how many people are engaged, and it's awesome, and we want to like keep being engaged. Some people are starting to actually look at the bills as they're written and trying to like interpret and read like how to read a bill. And so just wondering if you have any tips for us that we can like, when we pull up that bill, like the PDF of the bill, what should we look for? Like the strike throughs and things like that, that maybe might just give us some tips and tricks on that.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question, and it's not a not something that I've perfected yet. There are, yes, certainly if a bill is changing existing code, looking for those strike throughs, looking for those places in the code that it's explicitly changing is really important. Oftentimes, you'll also see a new section, so a specific new section of code that's adding on to existing code. That's the place to focus on. Um, but that's something I'm learning. I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned that I would just a lesson I would pass on to others is it's impossible. I mean, even with the art and science of reading a bill, which I'm getting better at understanding kind of where to draw my attention to, even with that, it's it's really hard to remain an expert on any one of these subjects. So I think it's being comfortable in passing that language or that draft off to someone else and saying, hey, can you give me a sense of what you're seeing as your from your perspective as a wildlife biologist, from your perspective as a pediatrician, from your perspective as a CPA? And that's been a good experience for me that I'm working on getting better at, is just saying, what are you seeing here and what am I missing? I think the nuances can be a bit overwhelming just on our own um, to grapple with.
Yeah, definitely. I have found I've tried to dive into some of the bills and it's a bit overwhelming. For me personally, like I'm relying a lot on advocacy groups who are doing a lot of really great just information sharing, like this bill does this and helping us all interpret what really is going on. So that's kind of what I've been doing. So I really appreciate a lot of the advocacy groups who are really engaged and doing that. So speaking of advocacy groups, how can one of the questions being asked now is how can your supporters and advocacy groups um, help you with your bills, like help you maybe help convince some more people to vote for them or support them.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question. It's and there are a lot of opportunities and places to influence the process. I think one specific way is when a bill is in committee, and you'll have between, I mean, depending upon it, whether it's the Senate or the House, between 8 and 20 individuals on that committee. And it's a great opportunity to just reach out to all of them via email, via text, via voice message, and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing with this, and here's how I would like you to vote. And it really does make a difference, especially if you are a constituent of that individual or in the same county. A lot of us, I think a general rule of thumb, although all of us do this differently, is that we pay a ton of attention to people who are in our own county. Um, and and also, we're all, most of us are literally flipping through those notes every single day. And so even if you're not in the same county, if you get, 400 letters from people from across the state on a particular issue, it makes you pay attention. And I think we've seen a couple of votes, particularly on the trans bills, where you saw representatives, Republican legislators, making really tough decisions because people from across the state reached out to them and said, hey, these bills are not okay, and we don't want you to vote for them. So it makes a difference. Reach out to people on the committee, tell them you support a bill, tell them you oppose a bill. And also just, anytime you're communicating appreciation for us, I think it makes a huge difference. It's a big emotional lift anytime, I think, to show up and be a thoughtful legislator, to pay attention, to be resilient, and to know that people are paying attention to what we're doing is feels really good. At least I'll speak for myself. It feels good to me to know that.
That's great. Thank you. So I don't see any new questions yet. So what is a typical day for you like right now? Walk us through a day.
Yeah. Let's see, typical day, getting up around 6. We caucus as a Democratic caucus at 7 in the morning virtually. There are only 33 of us, and so most of us show up. I would say we're doing a really good job of being a team, which feels really good, despite the fact that we're all, some of us are here, some of us are remote. So kind of against the odds, we're showing up, which is great, and communicating on the bills that are coming up, communicating on strategy. My morning committee starts at 8. That's tax. That lasts for a couple hours every morning from 10 or 10:30 until noon. I'm working on legislation, responding to emails, meeting with people, just there's kind of a never ending list of what it looks like to be prepared and responsive. Some of the best moments in that time period too are just getting to talk with the other legislators who are in this building. I typically spend most of my time on the House floor and just get to talk to the other folks who are up there. It feels like a really good experience to me. And typically meeting at noon, and then we have floor session at 1. So we're running through a number of bills. Our days are getting pretty busy. That usually lasts at least an hour and a half. And then our afternoon committees start at 3. So for me, that's Health and Human Services. And we're in a bit of a pattern where we can't get out before 5 or a bit later. We're also seeing a number of big bills come through. So it's a full day. And it also feels, it feels good. It feels good to be here.
Yeah. Do you do much like after 5, other than when you're hanging out with us and the
Other
gallery?
than when I'm hanging out here? Well, it's hard to do it in a safe, it's really hard to do it in a safe way. So there've been some, before it got so cold, some ways in which we're able to gather outside. But apart from that, it's a bit of a unique experience in that there's not the gatherings that there would be. And I would say too, it's just making it all the more challenging to form relationships. So I've been putting a big emphasis on that, but it's not, it doesn't feel easy to do that. At the moment, it has to happen in the Capitol.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we have a question about transmittal, and that's one thing that we haven't talked about on one of these updates because we haven't, been even thinking about transmittal. So that's in a couple weeks. Can you explain what transmittal is and what will happen, and what do you do during transmittal, if you know?
Oh my gosh. So transmittal is one of the deadlines we have during the legislature. We are, my understanding is that it's the deadline for our bills that are starting in the House to move to the Senate and vice versa. There are some exceptions, resolutions, for instance, which is a bit of, it's a slightly different type of bill, can happen after that. So, and they're typically study bills are a great example of that. So instead of a specific change to code, it's a study bill. It's suggesting that we study this over the interim period. So those all have to be moved through before transmittal, and we have this break that I'm going to be splitting between resting, building up resilience, taking care of myself, and also hopefully doing at least one town hall, maybe more. And I feel really excited to use it as an opportunity to just come back to Bozeman and say, this is what we're doing, and here's what we're learning and thinking about. So that's what I'll be using the break for. And then afterwards, we'll be focusing on our big budget and then passing bills through from the Senate. So it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, again, it's my first time doing this, but I feel excited to use that time to be intentional about communicating back to Bozeman about what I'm learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little fun fact, the transmittal break in 2017, the Gallatin Dems had a little town hall at the library, and that was the first Gallatin Democrats event I had ever been to. I never heard of Gallatin Democrats until then. So I kind of hope we do something probably virtually with at least some of our representatives so we can, have that update from more of you at once.
Yeah.
Because it's really neat to know what you've been up to and what's going on. So one more question that's come up. We have a citizen legislature. You all, or most legislators, have other jobs. How do you maintain your day job during all of this, or do you take off from your job?
Such a good question. I have taken a complete leave of absence. So for 4 months and change, I'm just taking a break and unpaid leave. I know that some people are balancing that in with various degrees of complete leave, working full time. But I think the general consensus is it's really hard to work a full-time job when you're here. And there's no, I mean, it's a citizens legislature, so there's no one way that you have to show up as a legislator, and you can still be, be a legislator and be working full-time. And yet it requires such an amount of time and space and emotional energy that I think it compromises our ability to be here and be present with a full-time job outside of here. But there are people who do it, and people who balance that.
Wow, which is just amazing. Thank you. Anything else that you want to share with us? Any other bills that maybe you're hearing in committee that we should know about, or anything like that?
I mean, such a good question. I think it's really hard to keep up with all of the bills that are going on, which is why, I mean, it's impossible for me to keep up with all of them. I'm barely keeping up with what's going on in my own committees, let alone what's on the House floor and what's in other committees. So finding good outlets and sources of information seems really good. Of course, relying on the Gallatin County Dems. And in terms of keeping up to date, for Montana, I think is also doing a really nice job of kind of week by week, as well as high level, giving us a sense of the trends, what to look out for. I would just say it's, I mean, it's been really interesting now. What are we, 6 weeks, maybe 6 weeks into the legislative session, to see that with a Republican governor and with a Republican controlled legislature, we're still not passing legislation that is focused on the economic development of Montanans and Montana communities and the state. And that was the promise of this administration. And this was the promise of a Republican legislature. And I just think I think that's something to note. I think that's something to be paying really close attention to. And it's really hard for all of us when we're in the mix of all the stuff that's going on to take a step back and say, hey, wait, we're focused on combating all these bad bills, and actually nothing that was promised is coming to fruition. And Democrats are trying as hard as we can to push stuff through, and we're making a little bit of progress, moving the needle just a bit. But I just think it's important to know, and important to say, as we're thinking about what our long-term strategy of building a bench and doing local organizing work, to say, what is it really that Montanans are looking for? And I don't think it's a conservative agenda being pushed through. I think it's economic opportunity and equality. I think it's the promise of a future, with, with with opportunity and prosperity, and the opportunity to make our own decisions for ourselves. And so I think I just want us to, I guess if I just had one wish, it would be that we just all get to start talking about what that looks like, and say we have this vision of the future, and it's the people who are in positions of power at the moment are not prioritizing that, are not taking that seriously, are not caring for that need on behalf of the people of Montana. And I get excited to think about how we eventually get there.
Yeah.
So that's a long-term thing, but I don't know. Just I'm paying attention to it. I hope other people are paying attention to it as well.
Yeah, you're not alone in seeing that and paying attention to it. And I think we are too. And the reality is that Democrats are in the super minority this session, doing everything that you can to mitigate harm while also lifting up really good bills like the ones that you are sponsoring, and other colleagues, and recognizing that we have values and solutions long term that will help Montana and all Montanans. And so I'm excited to keep working on those, and I'm grateful for you, for your work, and everyone else in our party who's doing that. And there's a lot of us. So with that, thank you, Representative Buckley, for being with us. And I just really appreciate your time. I know you're so busy. But it's wonderful to see you and catch up. And again, congratulations on getting the bill at least over one hurdle. I know you've got more, but we're with you, and we're very excited for all that you're doing. Thank you.
It feels so good to be here. Yeah. And you're just getting to see me in my natural habitat, which is the Democratic bullpen in the basement of the Capitol. So I really appreciate that. Allison, so good to see you. Thanks for having me again. And just appreciate you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, as does everyone, and hope you have a good restful weekend. And I think we'll probably see you after, well, maybe during transmittal and definitely after. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.
So good. Thanks, Allison.
Bye.
Bye.